Hello everyone, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of The Cutting Board. Today's episode is going to be all about experimentation. Today I'm going to I built them right here. So let's try this again. Today I'm going to be building my own set of vintage crates. Now anybody who knows me knows that I am all about building things before buying them, because usually you can build them at about half the price, make it twice as nice, and make it unique to your home. Now anybody who loves woodworking or who likes having a rustic vibe in their house has probably been to a flea market before or been on Etsy and seen those really cool looking vintage crates that they sell. They usually have logos like Coca-Cola on them or Anheuser-Busch, and they cost the same amount that you would pay for probably a new Honda Civic. So like I said before, today is all about experimentation. So even though I was successful in building these, there's a couple of things that I don't like about them or that I would probably do differently next time. I guess it doesn't matter. Why don't we go ahead and get onto the episode. I'll walk you through how I built these 3 crates. They're relatively simple, but I do a few techniques in them that I had never done before. And at the end of the episode, I can walk you through a couple of things that I would probably do differently. So let's get on to the episode. The cool thing about this project is the versatility of it. You can make any size, shape, or color of these crates that you want. I'm making 3 specific crates for my apartment, so I did a bit of prep and figured out I could get everything I wanted out of 1 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood and still have leftover pieces for a future project. To make the larger cuts, I'm setting up my rip cut from Craig that allows you to make very straight cuts with only your circular saw on large pieces that already have a square edge. And of course, if you don't have a straight edge, you can always use a piece of straight scrap plywood to make one. I then got started, and I think I immediately needed to change the battery in my saw. You can see how easy it is to run the guide along your straight edge and make large cuts. I found that when I got to making smaller ones, it became more difficult to maneuver things, and thus switching to my miter saw to make the final cuts proved much easier. And for any pieces too big for my miter saw, I could cut one side, flip over that piece, line it up again, and then finish it off. Just make sure to take your time on this for accuracy. And here are my cuts, and don't forget that all of my measurements will be in my written article linked in the description. After finishing my cuts, I switched to my computer to make my logos. I did some research and found a technique where you could print a mirrored logo from your inkjet printer onto a piece of wax paper, and then using a credit card, you could then push that ink onto your wood, which would then transfer the logo to the wood as the ink would bleed into it. I was surprised this worked as well as it did. 2 tips here: use only black ink and use logos that are heavy on that ink. The lighter ones just don't work that well. Also, a laser jet printer will not work for this. Next, I took to assembly, and I specifically did my ink logos first to avoid having to disassemble things and start over in the event that I messed everything up. For assembly, I'm using my pocket hole jig. To make things flat and square, I clamped my pieces together and then flipped everything upside down, and all of my pocket holes were hidden for this, either on the bottom of the crate or on the inside. And I love pocket holes because no glue is required to maintain a very strong bond between your pieces. Once assembled, I took to rounding off all the edges with my orbital sander and a hammer. This just helped give them a more weathered look. I then used my power drill and hole saw as well as my jigsaw to cut out handles on each side of the boxes. This was a last minute addition, and a router would have been much better for this, but I made it work. I then decided to add a few slats onto one of my boxes to help differentiate it. I glued them on, I used finish nails to hold it in place, I cut off the excess pieces and then sanded them down a bit to knock off the edges. Next up was staining, and I'm using a Minwax Colonial Maple to stain these. I'm not sure how I feel about it at this point. And last up, I wanted to add a bit of shine to the boxes, so I wiped on a single layer of a satin polyurethane, which worked great. And at this point, it was time for their final home.
So
So that will do it for this week's episode. So the two things that I think I would do differently if I built these again. One, I would probably purchase spray paint and the stencils of the logos that I wanted to use. Now that might not be the most DIY way, but if you're looking to make something pop a little bit more, I mean, you can tell this is pure black ink, and even with that, it doesn't really show all that well once you put stain on it. It works, but it's not great. So while that was a cool technique to experiment with, it might not be the best for something that you're trying to build for your own home and make look as similar to what you might be able to buy at a flea market or on Etsy or any other place that is going to be way overpriced. The second thing I would do is probably take the extra sheets of plywood that I had left over. If you remember, there was a ton of extra scraps from that big piece that I had, and I would probably purchase maybe 3 to 4 different color stains. I thought I would love the colonial maple. I thought, I guess when I was buying it, that it would look closest to what I had seen at flea markets, and while I like it, I think I would rather have tested a bunch of different stains. I mean, you can get those little cans of stain for $3 or $4. I think I would have liked to have experimented to see what each of those stains would look like on the plywood and then be able to make a better assessment of what colors I would like. As always, guys, if you do want more information about this build, you can check out the written article that I have linked in the description, or I will put it up here in the corner for you to check out. If you did enjoy the video, please hit that like button. That lets me know that you did like it and that you are enjoying the types of projects that I put out into the world. And most of all, if you did enjoy the video, please hit that subscribe button, and I do not remember where it is in the player, but I will link it right here for you to click. That way you guys can stick around for any future projects, as well as check out the ones that I have put out in the past. And that will do it for this week's episode, guys. I will see you next time on the cutting board.